twice as many votes as each of the other members, but 3 times the power. Another way to capture the power relationships is to create a picture. Let's construct a geometric model of the committee's voting power. The 8 coalitions can be represented as the vertices of a cube. Now, we add the quota of 3, the majority decision rule, to our picture. This divides the cube into winning coalitions, which are the larger ones toward the top, and losing coalitions, which appear below. Since the cube includes all the possible coalitions on the committee, we can read the Banzhaf power index from it directly. Every edge of the cube corresponds to a member whose vote is being added to a coalition. This allows us to label each edge. The quota line crosses the edges that are critical, the edges that represent turning a losing coalition into a winning one. Now we just have to count the number of times each voter appears on these crucial edges to determine the power index. The result is the same. The dean has 3 times the power of each of the other members.
I have had 3 pieces of cake already.
Okay, wait a minute.
I have to know who I want to see.
Theoretically, we should go by who is
But
most
wait a
in
minute,
need
wait a
of
minute.
those calories.
No, wait a minute.
Jennifer wants
People have
50.
different-
Guys, I want a piece that's like 3/4 of that size because I'm half the time on a diet, but I feel
Well,
like
why
eating
don't
right
we just divide up?
Divvying up the cake according to people's needs sounds like a fair scheme, but then, of course, you have to figure out what a fair need is.
Come on, bigger the whole thing.
Almost every day's newscast describes some battle between the president and members of Congress. Who really holds the power to control legislation at the highest levels of the federal government? Mathematician Lloyd Shapley and economist Martin Shubik, armed with their own version of a power index, took on this question. You know the basic rules. In order to become a law, a bill must be passed by majorities in the House of Representatives and the Senate and signed by the president. The president can veto a bill, but 2/3 majorities in both houses of Congress can override the veto. Shapley and Shubik looked at this legislative process as a weighted voting system made up of 3 voters: the House, the Senate, and the President. Here's the distribution of power they calculated. Expressed as ratios, the power proportions are 2 to 5 to 5. The Senate and House have approximately equal power, and each has about 2.5 times as much power as the President. For individual voters, though, the ratios look very different. In other words, as an individual, the president has almost 40 times the power of a senator and 175 times the power of an individual representative. These measures of power help us see beneath the surface of a weighted voting system. And their impact is not only theoretical, they already play a role in practical politics. The courts in New York State, for example, now require that a weighted voting proposal be accompanied by a power analysis. In fact, the courts have established that a representative's Banzhaf power index shouldn't differ from the proportion of the population that he or she represents by more than a few percent. If you represent 15% of the county, for example, then you shouldn't wield more than, say, 18 or 20% of the power on the county board. And in recent cases, the courts have become even more strict. Weighted voting systems are tricky. So why do we use them? Because weighted voting enables us to elect officials from natural districts, neighborhoods, and ethnic communities, even when those districts are not equal in population. Measuring power allows us to weight the votes fairly. You might say that using the power index allows us to have our cake and eat it too. And speaking of cake, our students are still working on the problem of how to divide a cake fairly among 7 people. You can see that they've been working hard, but without much success. There is a fair division procedure for dividing something like a cake among more than 2 people. And now that I've tipped them off, these students will demonstrate the method for us. Okay, guys, all yours. The first person cuts a piece and passes it around the circle. The next person has a choice: make the piece smaller or let it go by. If he makes it smaller, he's saying that the reduced piece is the share he's willing to take. He puts the trim back on the cake. And he passes the slice on, because everyone down the line has the same choice, independent of who's gone before. Trim the slice or leave it alone.
I don't know.
And here's the decision rule. The piece goes to the last person who touches it.
I'm sorry.
The seventh person passes, so Jennifer is it. This piece is hers.
Because you got a choice.
A new slice and the process continues. Each remaining person has another chance. Trim or don't touch.
He's cutting and you get to choose.
Sorry. No, wait.
When there are only two people left, they play the traditional version of fair division. One slices, the other chooses.
She knows how to
I want the nice piece.
Are you calling me a slob?
This method works because every person ends up with a share of the cake they cut for themselves. But not everything divides as easily as cake. So perfectly fair apportionment in all cases is impossible. Someday your state may lose a disputed seat in Congress. And since power isn't always proportional to the number of votes, your councilman may actually be a dummy. But now there's no reason why you should ever get shortchanged at a birthday party.
Major funding for this program was provided by the Annenberg CPB project. Additional funding was provided by the Carnegie Corporation of New York.
For centuries, mathematicians have tried to find the perfect voting method. But for every method someone designed, someone else found...
Hang on, we've got a sound problem here. John, can you check that, please? Oh, maybe a loose cable. Okay, we're gonna have to fix that. Sorry, Saul. Take 5.
Okay. That agent was supposed to call by now. I can't wait. Now that I'm a national celebrity with my own series, it should be a cinch to crack the big time. I mean, this educational stuff is okay, but I know I'm ready for prime time. All I need is the right break. Like the agent said, every serious news show needs a mathematics expert to help interpret what's really going on in the world. Limo to work, dining with the stars.
Tonight, we will witness an historic moment in American politics. The Replacement Party, a party that in recent years has become a tough contender on the national scene, is holding their nominating convention. The outcome of this election may very well determine national policy for decades to come. My name is Steve Mitchell. With me in our studio is Dr. Saul Garfunkel, a distinguished mathematician who will give us his expert political analysis during these proceedings. It's good to have you with us, Saul.
It's very nice to be here, Steve.
Saul, as you well know, the Replacement Party's convention has drawn a lot of media attention this year. Let's go live to the convention site, where our reporter Jack Webster is standing by.
I'm here at the Replacement Party National Convention, where there's a feeling of anticipation in the air. Later on today, these 55 delegates will participate in a process that has never been tried before at an American political convention. 5 candidates are vying for the nomination of this party, and all 5 will be appearing here today. But the focus of the last few months of debate has not been on candidates or issues. It's been on voting methods. In a last-ditch compromise agreement reached just a few days ago, the Replacement Party has decided to conduct 5 different ballots using 5 different voting methods, all at one time. It's unfamiliar and potentially explosive territory, but we'll be here throughout the evening to keep you up to date on just what all this means.
Saul, what's the source of all this controversy?
Well, Steve, that's the only question today which has a definite answer. The choice of voting method can significantly affect, sometimes actually determine, the outcome of an election. And when the outcome depends on the voting method, you can bet that people will be very interested in finding a method that benefits them.
With all this concern over voting methods, what happened to good old majority rule?
Well, majority rule is still a very good way to make a decision that represents the voters' wishes. In elections with only 2 candidates, the process is very simple. The candidate with the largest share of the votes wins. But when there are more than 2 candidates, as we have today, it's possible that the person with the highest tally will not have a majority of all the votes cast. In these cases, we have to come up with another way to decide who should win the election.
Throughout this broadcast, Dr. Garfunkel will be helping us understand the methods, some of which may be unfamiliar to our viewers. In the meantime, our reporter Cindy Schaefer is standing by. Cindy?
The traditional opening ceremonies for the replacement party have just been concluded. The presentation of the colors by the Somerville High School ROTC, the invocation by Gary Coleman, and the formal vote of approval for the Credentials Committee report. But while these standard preliminaries attempt to portray a unified front for the party, the political wheeling and dealing is barely concealed beneath the surface. Well, it seems that the crowd is getting excited about something. Yes, it's Cabot Mallory entering the convention floor. Mallory, of course, was the keynote speaker for the replacement party convention 4 years ago, where he set the tone for the last campaign.
My fellow replacers. I'm delighted to come before you this evening to speak to you of the founding tradition of the replacement party, the tradition of change. Thank you. I'm reminded as I worked my way in and saw this strong...
Standing next to me is a delegate from Butte, Montana, Mr. Fred Schultz, who is a prime mover in the Cabot Mallory campaign. Mr. Schultz, can you tell me what his chances are?
Cindy, I think his chances are very, very good. In fact, he is very strong under the plurality method.
And one clear-eyed individual called out, "Send a replacement."
The Butte delegate mentioned the plurality method. Saul, could you explain how that method works?
The plurality method is probably the most familiar of the 5 voting methods we'll be talking about tonight. When we go to the polls to choose among more than 2 candidates in a congressional election or presidential primary, the plurality method is used. The process is simple. The candidate with the most votes wins, even if he or she does not receive a majority of the vote. Take the 1980 New York Senate race, for example. Alphonse D'Amato defeated his 2 opponents with just 45% of the vote. D'Amato was generally seen as the conservative candidate, while Elizabeth Holtzman and third-party candidate Jacob Javits appealed to liberal voters. Exit polls indicated that at least 2/3 of Javits' supporters preferred Holtzman to D'Amato. If Javits hadn't been in the race, the election would easily have gone to Holtzman. In effect, then, Holtzman and Javits split the liberal vote. And under the plurality method, the second most popular candidate was elected. For Javits voters, this election illustrates the classic third-party problem in American politics. The supporter of a third-party candidate faces a very difficult decision. Should I vote for the person I really want and risk wasting my vote? Or should I vote insincerely for my second choice?
Saul, we have word from the convention that the second candidate is now at the podium.
I am proud to be running as a housewife and mother in this campaign. I believe we need to return to the real family values of sharing and cooperation.
Ruth Aberman is at the podium now, and she seems to be sounding many of the same themes that have served her so well throughout this campaign. By the way, I understand that her entire family, the husband, her 5 children, and her well-known Irish setter, Rover, are following the convention proceedings just outside the hall in her campaign trailer.
We need to replace our roads and bridges.
I'm here on the convention floor with the delegate from Biloxi, Mississippi.
That's Biloxi.
Oh, excuse me, Biloxi, Mississippi, Mitzi LaRue. Mitzi, how do you feel that Mrs. Aberman's going to do tonight in the election?
I think she's going to do fine. She's for women's rights. She has a lot of good issues. I think she's going to do just great.
Oh.
Jack?
Excuse me?
Jack, excuse me, if I can jump in here. It's important for our purposes here that we get some additional information on the delegates. Can I ask Ms. LaRue how she ranks the candidates in this race?
Do you mind if I write this down?
Excellent idea. Here.
That's Aberman, Valdez. Richardson. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's Rao.
You know, these delegates have a tough job. It's easy enough to pick your first choice, but ranking 5 candidates in order takes a lot of thinking.
May I say you have an excellent handwriting?
Why, thank you.
A list like Ms. LaRue's is called a preference schedule, and it figures prominently in the way many of these methods work. I'm going to use a humble, everyday example to illustrate the idea of preference schedules. Imagine that 11 people are going out to dinner together. You know how hard it is to decide on what to eat. They've narrowed their options down to pizza, Chinese food, or tacos. Now, each person first ranks his or her preferences individually. For example, one person might prefer Chinese food first, then tacos, and then pizza. From 11 of these individual preference schedules, a complete list of everyone's preferences can be compiled. This is the preference schedule we just saw: Chinese food, tacos, and pizza. And here's another possible list: Chinese food first again, but pizza next and tacos last. With 3 kinds of food, there are 6 possible lists in all. Now, as it happens, only 3 of these preference schedules showed up among our 11 people's lists. 5 people preferred Chinese food first, then tacos, and then pizza. 2 had the list that runs tacos, then pizza, then Chinese food, and 4 ranked pizza first, then tacos, then Chinese food. Now, if we use the plurality method to tabulate the votes, we find that Chinese food gets the most first-place votes, 5, and wins the election. But now we can see something we couldn't have known if we hadn't listed complete preference schedules. An absolute majority, 6 voters, actually ranked Chinese food last.
Saul, it looks like the plurality method has its troubles. What can be done?
Well, people are trying to get around the problems with plurality voting by adding a runoff. Instead of choosing one winner, plurality with a runoff chooses a smaller group of top candidates, which are then run against one another in subsequent elections.
How does adding a runoff help?
Adding a runoff ensures that a candidate ranked last by a majority of the voters will not be elected. But the method does have some problems. Let's say that candidates A, B, and C are running for office. There are 100 voters who fall into 4 groups. 38 prefer them in the order A, then B, then C. 30 prefer C first, then A, then B. 25 prefer B first, then C, then A. And 7 prefer B, then A, then C. The top 2 finishers in the plurality election are candidate A with 38 votes and candidate B with 32. In the runoff, using the same preference schedules and adding up the choices, A beats B by a 68 to 32 margin. But here's a problem. We start again with the same preference schedules. This time, suppose A changes her stand on a controversial issue, and the 7 voters in the last column decide to make her their first choice. B is eliminated in the first round. Then in the runoff election, candidate C beats candidate A. By getting more votes, A loses the election. How can this happen? Under a reasonable voting method, one would think that more votes would help a candidate win, not prevent him from winning. The possibility of this kind of counterintuitive result is a major flaw in the plurality with runoff scheme.
Thank you, Saul. Now we'll go live to the convention where candidate Rodney Richardson III is winding up his speech.
And so, my friends, remember, when you register your vote for running Rodney Richardson III, you reaffirm your resolve to reinstate the replacement party as #1.
I believe Cindy Schaefer is down by the podium. Let's see if she can catch Mr. Richardson. Yes, I think she's with him now. Cindy?
Rodney, can you tell me, what do you think your chances are of winning the nomination?
Sure, Cindy. If I may repeat one of my earlier responses, after reviewing the remarkable job done by my staff of recruits, I can say that we are rapidly rolling down the road to a resounding victory.
Really?
Right on.
Cindy, the crowd has taken to its feet. Running Rodney's rhetoric really rallied the replacement party.
Right. And you can see the other candidates are out there shaking hands, partly because their pollsters tell them that Richardson is looking very good under the sequential runoff method.
Well, Saul, while the delegates let loose some pent-up energy, maybe you can fill us in on that.
Sure. Plurality with runoff, which we saw a minute ago, and sequential runoff are both elimination methods. But in sequential runoff, we eliminate just one candidate at a time. Let's look at an election lineup with 4 candidates to see how sequential runoff works. This time, since D has the fewest first-place votes, we eliminate her. In the second round, C is the loser. Then A wins on the third tally.